I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. Our house was always filled with noise, pride, and stories about Emma. She was the shining daughter, the golden one my parents could brag about. Captain of the cheer squad. Top of her class. Pretty, polite, perfect. People called her the pride of the Bennett family. And they weren't wrong. But where did that leave me? Somewhere in the background, too quiet, too strange, too different. I loved wires, old radios, and broken machines. I spent hours in the garage fixing what others threw away. The smell of solder and dust felt more like home than the living room. When I showed my father a circuit I built, he barely glanced at it. He said, "That's nice, Clara, but why don't you go help your mother?" Emma would walk in with her bright smile, and suddenly the world turned. All eyes, all praise, all warmth flowed to her. I learned to fade, to swallow words before they reached my tongue, to smile when my chest burned with silence. Christmas, when I was 14, still stings like frost. Emma opened her box and found a gold bracelet engraved with her initials. The relatives gasped, my mother glowing with pride. I searched under the tree for my name and found a paper bag. Inside, a pair of wool socks folded once, nothing more. I smiled anyway, pretending it was enough. But that smile burned like a secret bruise. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wide awake. I wondered what it would take to be seen, to be chosen, even once. Months later, I won first place at the regional science fair. I built a simple transmitter that could send signals across a room. I rushed home, breathless with excitement. My mother listened for a moment, then said, "That's wonderful, dear." Then she turned to my aunt and said, "Emma won her debate again." The whole table shifted toward Emma. The laughter rose. The stories began. And my small victory disappeared into the noise. That night, I held the certificate close to my chest until it crumpled. The paper tore a little at the edges where my hands shook. I realized something sharp and permanent. In this house, I could do everything right and still not be enough. So I stopped trying to impress them. I stopped hoping they'd notice. Instead, I turned inward. The computer in the garage became my friend, my world. Lines of code replaced dinner conversations. If I typed it right, it worked. If I typed it wrong, it told me so. No judgment. No silence. Just truth. In those hours, alone with the hum of the screen, I made a promise. One day, I would walk out of this house and never beg for a seat again. One day, I would build a table where I belonged, even if I had to build it alone. I left home the summer I turned 18. The sky over Tulsa looked the same, but everything inside me had changed. I carried one suitcase, a scholarship letter, and a quiet vow to never look back. The bus ride to Texas felt endless. Each mile stretched like a thread, pulling me farther from who I had been. When I arrived at the dorms, I stood in the hallway surrounded by strangers. No one knew Emma here. No one cared who my parents adored. For the first time, I was just Clara. It was terrifying. And it was freedom. College life was rougher than I imagined. The scholarship covered tuition, but not comfort. I worked nights in the computer lab, resetting passwords, fixing printers. Some weekends, I waited tables in a small Mexican restaurant near campus. The air smelled of cilantro and burnt oil, but it paid the bills. I lived on instant noodles and instant coffee. Sleep came in short bursts between deadlines. Yet, even on the hardest nights, I felt alive. Because every hour belonged to me. No comparisons. No expectations. Just me and the dream I refused to let die. I studied computer science, obsessed with clean logic and quiet precision. Code didn't lie. It didn't play favorites. When it failed, it told you why. I liked that honesty more than I ever liked people. During my senior year, I joined 2 classmates in a small startup project. We worked from a cramped apartment with one desk and 3 chairs. We were broke, exhausted, and fueled by cheap caffeine. But we believed in the same thing, building systems that saved lives. Our idea was a medical data network that hospitals could actually use. Everyone said it was too ambitious. We didn't listen. After graduation, we moved to Denver and registered the company. The rent was high, the clients were few, but the dream was still burning. We pitched to hospitals, got rejected, and pitched again. Some nights, I slept on the office floor beside my laptop. The hum of the servers became my lullaby. There were days I thought of giving up. I'd imagine my parents' voices, saying I'd never make it on my own. But then I'd remember that promise I made at 15. Never beg for a seat again. So I kept going. Then the pandemic came. Hospitals everywhere were drowning in chaos. Supply chains broke, data collapsed, and people were dying because no one could track resources. Suddenly, our ignored little program became essential. We connected hospitals, moved blood supplies, coordinated emergency transfers. For the first time, our work mattered. We weren't just a startup anymore. We were saving lives. It felt unreal. The girl who once fixed broken radios now fixing broken systems. 2 years later, when the company was finally acquired, I sat in silence. The zeros on the contract blurred before my eyes. I didn't cry. I just exhaled. Because in that moment, I knew. I had built something no one could take from me. Not even them. The day the deal closed, I sat in an empty office, staring at the screen. 7 digits blinked across the monitor, quiet and unreal. The company was gone. But I had won something no one could see, proof that I could stand on my own. My partners celebrated with champagne and noise. I drove home in silence, hands trembling on the wheel. That night, I thought about everything I could buy: cars, houses, freedom. But none of it felt right. What I wanted wasn't luxury. It was belonging. A place that was mine. Somewhere no one could say I didn't fit. So I opened a map and traced my finger north. Wyoming. Mountains, snow, and sky that stretched forever. A place quiet enough to hear myself breathe. 2 months later, I stood in Jackson Hole, boots sinking into white powder. The air burned cold and clean, sharp like truth. That was the moment I decided. I would build something there. Not a mansion. A sanctuary. It began with sketches, blueprints, and stubborn patience. I worked with architects who understood silence, not grandeur. Every beam, every stone had to feel alive. I spent 18 months watching the structure rise from the frozen ground. Pine logs stacked like memories, windows taller than dreams. When it was done, the lodge stood strong against the wind. Glass walls opened to the Tetons, their peaks glowing in morning fire. Inside, the air smelled of pine and smoke, like old stories reborn. I walked barefoot on the slate floor, hearing each step echo like a heartbeat. It was more than wood and stone. It was a statement. I had built my own table. In the great hall stood the centerpiece, a 10-meter walnut table. Smooth, heavy, shining with its natural grain. It took months to find the right tree, the right hands to carve it. When the sunlight hit its surface, it looked like flowing water. I ran my palm along it, whispering softly, "This is where I belong." For years, I had sat at side tables, half seen, half heard. Now, this one was mine. No one could decide if I was invited. No one could take my chair away. I didn't tell my parents or Emma about the lodge. I didn't need their opinions or their noise. This wasn't built for them. It was built for every version of me that had been ignored. The little girl with a paper bag gift. The young woman sleeping on the floor of her startup office. The silent one in the family photos who always stood at the edge. Each of them had a place here. One night, as the wind howled outside, I sat by the fire alone. The flames flickered against the glass, reflecting my face back at me. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not victory. Not revenge. Just peace. Because I had finally built a world where I belonged. And this time, no one could push me out. The morning after my mother's message, I stared at my phone for a long time. Something inside me refused to stay quiet anymore. I needed to know if it was just me who'd been cut out this year. So I called Ben, my cousin, the only one who ever told the truth. He answered on the third ring, his voice half asleep. "Did you get invited to Thanksgiving?" I asked. A pause, then a dry laugh. "Nope, same text. Keeping it small this year. Guess we're not family enough." I leaned back, letting the truth sink in. It wasn't just me. It was all of us, the ones always left out when it was convenient. Anger rose, but beneath it, a strange calm began to form. Maybe this was the moment I'd been waiting for. I opened a group chat and started typing. "If you're not invited this year, come to me. The lodge in Jackson Hole is big enough for everyone. Don't bring anything but yourselves." I hit send. Then I waited, heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo. The first reply came in less than a minute. "We're in. The SUV's ready," Ben wrote. Then Aunt Camille. "Are you serious? If you are, we're coming." Uncle Ray followed. "Pumpkin pie, already cooling. Save us a seat." More messages flooded in, cousins, uncles, neighbors who'd become family. My screen glowed with notifications until tears blurred my vision. For once, they were coming to me. To my table. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That night, I called Lucas, the lodge manager. He was a quiet man, a former Marine who noticed everything. "Lucas, we're hosting a Thanksgiving for everyone left out." He didn't hesitate. "Then let's do it right." By dawn, he had the floor plans spread across the walnut table. We marked rooms for kids, rooms for couples, rooms for the elders. "No one gets pushed into a corner," I said. He nodded firmly, understood. Next, I called me, the local chef from the farmer's market. She had hands weathered by work and eyes that smiled before her lips did. "I want the food to taste like home," I told her. She thought for a while, then said, "Applewood smoked turkey, sage cranberry, baked potatoes and salt crust, wild blueberry pie, cinnamon cider to warm the heart." Her words alone felt like a hug. For days, we worked side by side. We strung golden lights across the pine beams, hung garlands on the balcony, brought in a 12-foot tree that brushed the ceiling. The air filled with the scent of pine and spice. In every room, I left a small gift. For Ben, a mountain photo book. For Aunt Camille's kids, a robot kit and a telescope. For Grandma Ruth, a soft beige blanket and lavender oil. Each gift came with a handwritten note. "Happy Thanksgiving in our home." When the last ribbon was tied, I stood in the hallway, breathless. Outside, snow began to fall. The lights glowed against the glass. And for the first time in years, I felt it anticipation, not fear. This time, I wasn't waiting to be invited. This time, I was the one opening the doors. Thanksgiving morning came wrapped in silver light and slow-falling snow. The valley shimmered, quiet and untouched. I stood on the porch with a mug of hot cider, the scent of apple and cinnamon rising in the cold air. Far down the road, a faint hum broke the silence. Headlights appeared through the fog, one car, then another, climbing toward the lodge. My heart pounded, fast and nervous, like a drum under my ribs. The first SUV stopped, tires crunching over the snow. Ben stepped out, his cheeks flushed from the cold, eyes wide. "Clara," he said, half laughing, half gasping, "you built a miracle." I ran to hug him, warmth flooding through me. Behind him came Aunt Camille, holding a tray of steaming pumpkin pie. Her eyes filled as she looked around the glowing lodge. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "this feels like home." Soon, more cars arrived. Doors opening, voices filling the air with laughter. Children ran ahead, leaving small footprints in the snow. When they saw the 12-foot tree through the window, they gasped. Inside, the fire crackled in the great stone hearth, casting gold across the walls. Me, the chef, moved quietly between the tables, arranging plates and candles. The smell of smoked turkey drifted through the hall, thick and sweet. I looked around and saw faces glowing, hands helping, smiles spreading. For once, there was no main table and no side table. No separation, no silent hierarchy. Just one long walnut table, wide enough for everyone. I took a deep breath and raised my glass. To family, I said softly, the kind we choose and the kind that stays. Glasses clinked, laughter followed, and for a heartbeat, the world felt right. Me set the turkey down in the center, its skin glistening with herbs and smoke. The children cheered as bowls of cranberry and baked potatoes passed around. Steam rose, mingling with the warmth of candlelight. Stories spilled like wine, old memories, new jokes, easy laughter. I watched them all, my chest heavy with something between pride and peace. Then Grandma Ruth reached across the table and took my hand. Her palm was thin, her fingers trembling but strong. "You gave Thanksgiving back to this family," she said quietly. Her words hit me harder than any applause. I nodded, unable to speak, my eyes burning. Later, someone took photos, the glowing tree, the table, the faces full of light. They posted them to the family chat, where the pictures spread fast. By morning, my phone was buzzing with missed calls and messages. My mother. My father. And one from Emma. "Cheap move, Clara, really cheap." I stared at the words, then set the phone down. Minutes later, it rang again. I answered, and my mother's voice cut through, sharp and cold. "What are you doing? Why is everyone at your house?" Before I could respond, Grandma Ruth's voice rose behind me, steady and clear. "You should be proud, not angry. She opened her doors when you closed yours." Silence filled the line, heavy as snow. For the first time, they had no words left to take her place. And for the first time, I didn't need theirs. A week after everyone left, the lodge felt different. Quiet but not empty. The walls still held the laughter, the warmth, the scent of cinnamon and pine. Yet inside me, a small hollow space remained. There was one thing left unfinished. I needed to face them, my parents and Emma, not through screams, not through anger. So I called my mother one evening. "Can you, Dad, and Emma come to dinner?" I asked. Her voice wavered. "Just us." "Just us," I said. By dusk, snow began to fall again, slow and soft like forgiveness. Their car pulled up the drive, headlights washing over the glass walls. Emma stepped out first, coat perfect, face unreadable. My mother followed, clutching a small purse like a shield. My father stayed silent, his eyes scanning the lodge with wary curiosity. I opened the door and greeted them with a calm smile. "Come in," I said. "It's warm inside." The table was simple this time: soup, bread, and a bottle of red wine. No decorations, no crowd, no noise. We sat down. The silence stretched between us like thin glass. I poured wine into their glasses, then spoke quietly. "I didn't invite you here to argue. I just need you to listen." And then I told them everything. Not with anger, not with blame. Just the truth, piece by piece, year by year. Christmas when I got socks. The science fair they forgot. The nights I sat alone while they cheered for Emma. My voice didn't shake. It was steady, almost detached, like reading someone else's story. When I finished, no one spoke. My mother stared down at her hands, fingers knotted together. My father let out a slow breath, heavy and uneven. Finally, he said, "Maybe we just didn't see it." My mother nodded weakly. "We never meant to hurt you." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. Emma shifted in her seat, her confidence cracked. For once, she didn't know what to say. Her eyes flicked up to mine, full of something close to regret. I didn't hate her anymore. I just didn't need her approval. "I'm not asking for sorry," I said softly. "I just needed you to hear me." When dinner ended, they stood to leave. At the door, Emma turned back and gave a small nod. No words, just that a quiet surrender. I closed the door after them and leaned against it, breathing deeply. The house hummed with stillness. Outside, the snow glowed under the moonlight, endless and calm. I poured the last glass of wine and stood by the window. The reflection of the fire danced across the glass. I whispered to the dark, "I don't need to wait for a seat." I built the table. My phone buzzed once. A message from Grandma Ruth. It read, "Next year my seat will be beside you." Tears came easily this time, warm and quiet. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not because they stayed, but because I finally chose myself and opened the door anyway. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the snow like liquid gold. The valley was silent, except for the sound of wind through the pines. I stood on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, watching the world wake. The tracks from the cars had faded overnight, buried under fresh snow. But their laughter still echoed inside the lodge. Every wall, every beam, still carried the warmth of belonging. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I was the one who opened the door. The one who built the table. The one who turned loneliness into something living and whole. I picked up my phone and reread Grandma Ruth's message. "Next year, my seat will be beside you." I smiled, tears bright in the cold air. Because that one line held everything I had been searching for. Love. Recognition. Peace. I turned back toward the great hall, where sunlight hit the walnut table. It glowed like a river of light. I whispered to myself, "This is home." No permission needed. No approval owed. Just me, standing in the world I built, finally seen, finally enough.